Welcome to your Healing Place podcast with Linda and Mindy. It is our desire to address common concerns of how abortion and faith intersect in order to validate the emotional pain and grief that abortion can bring and give hope that recovery is possible. Well, Jenny, I'm just going to ask you to tell us a little bit about who you are today and what you're doing.
Sure. My name's Jenny Foster, and I live in the North Houston area, originally from Seattle, Washington. And we moved here 4 years ago. You can imagine that was a major change, geographically and in all ways, but a change for the good because it was done in prayer, and we were obedient to God for this crazy move. I'm moving you to Texas, and we said yes. So when we got here, my I had a book that God asked me to write, and it was about my abortion story, and it published shortly after we arrived in Texas. Um, and oddly enough, on what would have been my son's 21st birthday. So it was really special. But for anyone who has ventured into writing a book, this was a memoir on the topic of abortion within the context of marriage. It, it, if you've done that, it's a big feat, right? It's a big project to write a book. And I felt so relieved when it was actually published, as you can imagine. And I remember saying to God in my upstairs office, okay, like we're good now, right? I'm done. And it didn't take very long in my quiet time to hear him to say, no, I moved you to Texas because you're going to start an abortion healing ministry. And, I felt like Jacob for a couple days, just like, yeah, no, my networks are back in Seattle. I don't know people here, all the obstacles that you put out there for him, like, but Lord. And I just there's something beautiful about walking with the Lord long enough for me at this point where he's always been faithful, and every time I trust him, he's just got a hold of me. So I really just did it. Pretty much the next Monday, I got more copies of my books and made little gift bags for some ladies at the big church here in our community. And I knew that they actually had an abortion healing ministry, which probably, as a lot of people know, is fairly rare within a church. Um, so I was so thrilled that they were so close. So I went in and, just kindred spirits, just beautiful ladies. They were so receptive because they understand the importance of how many women out there have an abortion in their past. Um, and so they were excited to read the book, and friendships formed. And I thought about leading for them. I went through both of their retreats, post-abortion, abortion recovery retreats. Went through the Forgiven and Set Free curriculum with those. And at the end of the day, I mean, the Lord had given me the name of my ministry and a verse and so much confirmation that I still felt while we would partner and refer people back and forth to each other for help, I just went out like a Lone Ranger on my own. I had a ministry partner. Oh, God is so good. But he moved her from New York and me from Seattle and dropped us in Montgomery, Texas, 7 miles apart, with the same Bible verse, Luke 7:47, same kind of image of the woman with the long hair washing Jesus' feet, the alabaster box. And so she was a tremendous help in getting curriculum. She's a teacher, getting all that off the ground and getting me organized. I'm the creative one, and she's really strong on everything else. So once she went on to have two more beautiful babies, I was back out there as a Lone Ranger doing it myself. So yeah, it's just been a beautiful journey of obedience and covering and blessing that when we are obedient to his directive, when he really speaks to us like that, you don't need to be afraid because he is with you every step of the way. And he has been. He has been.
Yeah. And now you're with an even place.
I know.
So how
And
did
that
that
was a
happen?
God thing.
That was. Tell us how that happened.
It was when I started writing the book back in Seattle in 2018. You can imagine I wanted to make sure I had read and completed every Bible study that was out there, read and completed every book on
And
abortion,
there's a
every book
badge.
on grief, and there is a lot now. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went through my abortion in 2000, and there really wasn't as much out there. So I just wanted to make sure I was getting my healing, just going layer by layer and getting as deep as I could with the Lord, but very much was still doing it, by myself in isolation.
Mm.
I was at my church for 20 years. Took me 20 years to ever come out and like tell them that I'd had an abortion. That's a whole nother side note. It's like, deciding if you can feel safe in your church
Hmm.
to tell them
Yeah.
your past. Um, did I answer your question, Mindy? No, I think I'm
No. How'd you get within
halfway
even
there.
place?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So I also started making sure I could figure out who all the players were in the US, like who else was doing abortion recovery work. And I ended up meeting, I can't even remember. I used to have a spreadsheet, like 50 or 60 ladies, and had at least Zoomed or had phone calls, like connected with them personally, read their books. And when that happened with Mindy, we connected, and I think you asked me to do a podcast. And we
Yeah, on your
just had
book.
this,
Hmm.
yeah, we just felt so, thank you for doing that. We just felt so comfortable with each other. And I remember, I think it was early this year, 2025.
Hmm.
One time you just called and said, "Can I just run something past you, like that you were doing a project?" And it's just, I mean, we're peers. You have so much more experience than me, but there was
Not
just,
much.
oh, I don't know, but
Not much, really.
we just lined up. She's
Yeah.
humble. We just we just lined up on our values and our approach, and certainly our theology and our, love for Christ being first. And I had been praying, Lord, do I keep my ministry, which is called Loved Much? Do I keep my little tiny go after the one, small group? Or do I consider partnering with another organization so that maybe I'd have more resources? The main thing was I just want more women in the seats.
Hmm.
There's so many people hurting. And if you're
Hmm.
listening to this, you may very well be one of the people who've had an abortion and are hurting. And that's what drives my heart to do this work is you just want to get the word out. And with Mindy and I, joining forces, her allowing me to come onto her beautiful team, and to get to meet Linda, whose name I'd already known. I was already following her on social media, kind of creeping on her page, knowing,
Stalking you, Linda.
Oh
yeah,
dear.
stalking you just a little. I mean, it was such an honor to me. And I said, yes, let's do it. We'll navigate how we're going to do it, if it's going to be overnight, or I think we're basically transitioning it a
Yeah, I
little
think
bit
so.
with a
A little
little
bit at
bit
a
of,
time.
yeah, a little bit at a time.
Letting you decide how fast you want to go. And you're blogging with us, which, oh my gosh, is such a treat because I'm not a writer. I can write, but it takes me so long, and you just whip it out.
Oh,
And
thanks.
helping me with editing projects, which is a super big blessing too, because I just get tired and don't want to write and don't want to think anymore because it takes a lot of thinking effort for me to write. So, and then you're leading groups with us, and you and Linda are leading a group right now. And
With joy.
Yay.
yeah, and that's going good.
Wonderful.
And then, and for all of our listeners, Jenny is now one of our intake coordinators. So if you have not contacted us, she may be one of the gals that reaches out to you to do an intake phone call and just to greet you and say hello and help you find the best fit. Because, just for our audience to know, we aren't the only gig in town. As Jenny mentioned, there's thousands of abortion recovery going on around the nation. We don't know them all, but more and more are becoming virtual and doing virtual. And that was the thing, Jenny, you were doing virtual, and so are we. And so it just felt like a good fit. And we needed leaders, so it just worked out really good, and we're so glad to have you. So what we do, though, with those who are listening is in the intake process, if there's plenty of content out on our website, so you can research us a little bit, but we help you find a better fit if it's not us, because we know that we're all different and we all have unique needs, and there's no shame in that, and there's no judgment whatsoever. We just want you to be in the place you feel the safest and can go the farthest. And that's what's important to us. So, Anyway,
And that's one of the things I love about what God is doing in abortion recovery is
that's
He is
true.
just raising up an army, and there's so many
Yes.
women that He is calling out, and so
Yes.
many different studies to meet different needs. And
Yes.
one of the things, Jenny, that I've appreciated about getting to know you is even though our stories are very much the same, they're also different, and yours is a little bit different. Can you tell us
Hmm.
a little bit about your journey through abortion?
Sure. Let's see, I'm gonna date myself here for sure. So my abortion was in 2000 out in Seattle. I was married and we had a little girl who was like 2.5. And so this was our second pregnancy. And we went in for, kind of that routine ultrasound. We were about 16.5 weeks or so. And we were going to find out if it was a boy or a girl.
Mm.
So, it was a much anticipated visit, a little bit of a different tone because this was a very wanted pregnancy. And then we were going to go home and tell our daughter whether she was having a, baby brother or a baby sister because we hadn't told her yet. So anyway, we went to this skyscraper high level ultrasound downtown Seattle, and they do all the things and check everything over, and they tell us that it's a little boy, and I was just thrilled because I thought one of each, and I'm done, right? So anyway, but then they proceeded within a matter of minutes to start telling us everything that was wrong with him. So, it's never a good feeling when the doctors leave your room and then they come back and then they come back with like one or two other people and everybody's looking at the
Mm.
monitor and you're like, I've had enough medical experience to know this is probably not good. So, yeah, our situation is, there's many different terms for it. They can call it like poor fetal prognosis. Sometimes people will call it a life-limiting or a devastating diagnosis. There's all kinds of terms, but um, it looked like there was something pretty significantly wrong with the baby's kidney. And of course, I'm in there thinking, well, it's just a kidney. It's thanks, I. And surely you can fix him. But unfortunately, then they went on to his heart and found out that, he had like half of a ventricular septum. It wasn't complete. And I said, well, can't that sometimes like finish knitting together, throughout the pregnancy? No. And then he didn't have any septum, any separation between the atrial parts of his heart. And so some of that I was still thinking, maybe they could do, that in utero surgery where they can sometimes fix some of these precious babies, before they're born. But they said they didn't have that, technology for that type of thing. They just really would have to wait and see. And then the last thing that really put us over the edge was they thought there was something with his head measurements that could have indicated what's called a lemon sign, which could have pointed to some type of genetic aberration or, just a much more serious set of defects that they were finding.
So they really,
So
at that point, suggested abortion.
they did. Yeah, at that
Yeah,
point, they were like, you need to terminate, and there was no other option.
yeah.
There were four providers, a genetic
Mm.
specialist involved, and all of them unanimously said, not even like we need to suggest this. It was, you have to terminate the
Mm.
pregnancy.
Mm.
Hmm.
So we left there with pretty strong messages from more than one voice that
What was that
they're like,
like
go,
in there when you heard that?
oh my gosh. I remember the air feeling like it just got sucked out of that little room.
Mm.
Um, just absolute shock. You know how you can go into shock. I remember being kind of shaky. Um, I tend to hold things together on the outside pretty well from my job training, but I excused myself and went to the bathroom, and I just remember just like leaning over the sink, like thinking you're gonna be sick and
Mm.
just crying harder than I've ever cried in my life.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, we were silent commuting home on the ferry, and we were given the weekend. It was a long weekend, I think, but we were given the weekend to confirm if that was what we were going to do. But no other options were given to us. There was no chaplain, who came in from the hospital. There was nobody coming in saying, have you considered even adoption if you don't feel like you could handle a special needs child? But mostly there was a lot of pressure, and you really need to think about your daughter, that like how this will impact
Mm.
her life if she has a little brother that dies at some point or has to have multiple surgeries, early in his life. So it
Um,
was just so
really,
dark and heavy.
yeah, really quick, you said you were given the weekend to consider what you were going to do. I can't remember your exact words. And
Mm.
does that mean they wanted you to give them an answer? Like, were the doctors expecting you to come back with a decision that in the
Hmm.
next week? Really?
Yeah, I mean, we're going back like 25 years, but I know we had the weekend to think about it. And so, I mean, I just didn't sleep. I mean, I just stayed up all night long, just
Mm, sure.
grieving and, just so conflicted. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't know for our listeners if anyone has experienced anything like this. If there's a point, like I'm at the point where I can be honest with myself now and just remember the conflict between loving my son so much and wanting him and being so terrified of like, I don't know if I want to continue this pregnancy. Like, can I do this? This is so, so, so scary. So,
On the point of
yeah,
continuing your pregnancy, did they ever talk about just what would happen if he lived out his natural life? Did they
nope,
give you any, really?
nope, nope. And
Sounds
what
like
was
they didn't know.
interesting, honestly, it's like, yeah, maybe they didn't know. This was
Mhm.
again 2000. My cousin, oddly enough, had gone through a very similar experience, but we lived cross country from each other, so I just knew little bits about it. And now we've talked it through, but her baby had some similar heart defects and some other issues, but she chose to carry their son to term.
Mm,
And so for all these years, I've always been so happy for my
hmm
cousin that she had an opportunity to hold her son Joshua,
mm,
even for just a few hours.
yeah.
Um, I can't go back in time and change my decision, but I haven't talked to a woman yet who's been through this, who, even if the baby is deceased at the time of delivery, who as painful and traumatic as it could be, if they've had a chance to even see their baby for a moment or wrap them up in a little blanket, the nurses, the staff are usually so tender, in a stillborn situation or baby's not going to make it very long, to get them to their parents, to hold them, take photographs, get a lock of hair, all these precious things that really can help you as you're
Yeah.
grieving going forward. Yeah.
Yeah. You never had a woman regret that.
Never. No. There's
What,
trauma, but
real,
there's
quick- real
trauma from
quick,
it. But
just in terms of a timeline, your cousin, when was she pregnant in conjunction to when you were
I'm
pregnant?
actually trying to think. Oh, I guess it was further back than I thought. That she went through that in the fall of 1994. And
And
so,
so that was before
yeah,
you,
and it was before me, but significantly enough that we didn't even put that together.
really. Well, you were
Yeah.
probably in so much shock.
I,
Yeah.
just yeah, absolutely
And being
shell
pressured to
shocked.
make a very fast decision. So,
Very fast decision.
okay, so you go back the next week and then what?
We ended up having an amniocentesis. We both just, I don't know, we almost wanted like some kind of confirmation, I guess, that if the amnio had come back and it really was a really like life-limiting or fatal type of diagnosis, I think that we thought that would make us feel somehow better
Mm,
if we decided to terminate. Um, Another thing that haunts me is that the amnio takes a while to come back. At least it did at that time. So we had already made the decision either way to just go forward and let our son go. And then the amnio came back and it was fine. So, I mean, the structural things were there, they just weren't linked together in a specific genetic diagnosis. So that haunted me too. So it's like,
So
I'll
had
never
you
know.
waited
Well,
for the amniocentesis, do you think you would have changed your mind?
I don't want to speak for my ex-husband, but I don't think that he would have.
Okay.
Yeah, and our this part's okay to say, our marriage was almost over. I was hanging by a thread.
Mm,
And so this is where you start to have that the shame gets more and more layers on top of it that
mhm,
I was pretty sure I was going to end up having to get my daughter and I out of that situation and leave.
mm.
And so the thought of bringing a special needs child or the grief of losing a baby that you get to hold for a week and he passes, I didn't think, because I was using my head, I didn't think that, our marriage could survive.
Welcome to your Healing Place podcast with Linda and Mindy. It is our desire to address common concerns of how abortion and faith intersect in order to validate the emotional pain and grief that abortion can bring and give hope that recovery is possible.